Alright, let me see if I can do this in under 6 minutes. Alright, in the beginning, there was darkness, right? That darkness, right? That's what we call the abyss, or chaos. That was first before light got created 3 days later. This is important because there's a story of it that's in the Sephiroth, or what we call the Jewish Kabbalah, mysticism, you know what I'm saying, the tree of life. It got a very, very deep root in what's called Gnosticism. Gnosticism is really Coptic, Egyptian, you know, writing, that's religious writing and stuff, which date back further before the Egyptians to the Chaldeans and Babylonian, that's the last real first one, or York if you want to go there, but really it goes back to Atlantis. Atlantis had these tall people, these tall black people called the Bushmen. You know, that's who they are, the Bushmen. They old people that's here, the first tribes. They was the original people from Atlantis that brought up that knowledge. You see their sculptures and their shields, those all have those images on it. Then before them too, or during them, but still before them, you have the Pygmies or the Lemurians. They was here first. They've been here 5 million plus years. So they was on another side, but they're spiritual beings. They're not physical in the sense of materialism. Now the Atlanteans were more materialistic. And so they kept the religious thing going. They had the king and queen ship going, which they brought with them when they came on to Kem or Kemet or Africa, however you want to call it. And then it was really popularized by the rich. If you went through the ritual or was initiated, or the process really of awakening your soul, you was considered alive or part of the living, which was part of the elite. If you was just a regular person, then you was part of the mortal or mundane world and the dead. So now, the religious text, they put it in a secret way, so that the dead will see it one way, but the elite or living will see it a different way. This is where people get stuck at right now. So what wind up happening now is that the story of what we're talking about with this tree of life and all this stuff is all religious based, but it has a very deep root to it. This root is about that darkness and how light was created 3 days later. Well, that's obviously telling you the darkness was there first. But they don't tell you what was in the darkness. There's stories of just darkness that they have hidden, they're not telling us about. Well, some of the stuff that it is really is about the darkness itself is the woman, the womb. You know, this womb that is the matriarchal system, which is the feminine energy, is also what's called the dragon. You know, that's Tiamat. That's the last real definition. There's probably older ones because it really goes back to one of the first form of religion. We follow the Christian religion now, but prior to that there was the Gnostic religion, which is the real truth, which is the African or Egyptian version of it. And then prior to that they had the Typhonian, this is ancient Egypt, and prior before that they had the Draconian, which they buried, and then most of it started resurfacing in Europe and England and all them places, and they assumed it as their Dracula and all that stuff. But the original Draculas is, you know, the dragon family comes from the Draco constellation and the system, but it really have a true essence to it because it's the dragon. The dragon is the darkness, and we're encompassed in that darkness. So that's why they have the dragon wrapped around the egg or around the world. It's a real thing. It's an invisible force, or what's called the astral world. This is now important to learn because you think you're your body. You're not your body, you're not your mind, you're not your thoughts. You're just inside of there. And now you have what's buried inside you, what's called the Russian dolls. That's a soul inside of a soul, inside of a soul, inside of a soul. And you have to go through all of them to get to the core to release them all. So the reason why that's important now is because over you, you have a magnetic field. This magnetic field now is where you're at. We're going to call that the emotional body. That's responsible for really your soul. Your soul don't look like how we think like us. This physical disappears. It goes back to ashes, dust to dust. It decay back to the elements it came from. But you don't disappear. You're what's called a spirit. But what is a spirit? All right, the spirit for you will be your emotional body. That's the only body that survives. All the rest goes on different journeys. So if you don't curb your emotions, whatever is inside your magnetic fields is what you see when you go to sleep and dream. It's actually a world inside of it. So say you go astral traveling or you go remote viewing. You would think that you left and went to your friend's house or you went to another world. No, what you're doing is sitting in your house, but the world come to you. Same thing when you're dead. You don't move. Everything is in you already, and you just move about in it. You're in one field. That's why you're the creator of your own self, and you're the creator of your own universe. You're going to pass off and live in that field, eventually work your way out of those demons and everything you see in that field, because everything you see in there is real. And those is all created from your emotional baggages that you hold inside of you. It's called your shadow side. You have two sides to you, your light side, which is the front of you, which we're going to call the tree of life. I mean the tree, but it's the day side of the tree. And then you have the night side of the tree, which is your back, the kundalini, the snake. That's the real you, the one that's really responsible for everything. But that real you is a destructive force. The reason why it's a destructive force is because everything in life has to rebirth and die, rebirth and die, rebirth and die. We're the only species that want to stay here and don't want to die. Everybody wants God, but nobody don't want to die. Or everybody want to go to heaven, but nobody don't want to die. So all of this now comes into play because discussing heaven real quick, heaven is a trap-off. This is where I'm going to get to now so you have a greater understanding of everything. The way it works is the Draconian Cosmology teaches you that first it was the dragon, the mother, and in her loneliness and her imagination, she formed Set, or what we will see as the devil now, which is Set. Set and her is the one that precursor now created everything else between